All right, so just over a week ago, I finished in the top 10 for the third time now at a U.S. Championship in various types of trail and mountain running. And 2 months before that, I was on a gold medal winning U.S. team that competed internationally. Um, Prior to that, going back to age 24, and every year before then, I never ran a step competitively or competed in any sports. Never had any interest in running, never really knew what trail running even was. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to share a little bit about my background, kind of how I found running, or it found me, it seems like. Met my wife on a running club. Running was a big part of my wife and I decided to move 3,000 miles to the west from New England. It's just been a huge part of my life, huge part of my friendships ever since basically 24 when I ran my first 5K. Borrowed my dad's basketball shoes because I did not own any athletic apparel, including shoes. Did that first 5K in, I want to say, 26, 27 minutes. It wasn't one of those, oh man, this guy's got crazy potential, but it was one of those situations where I finished and most folks I knew who ran more than, a few minutes at a time would complain about how awful it was. And I finished thinking, that wasn't so bad. I could do that again. And basically started running, community 5Ks, charity runs, that type of thing. Bought my own shoes, which was important. And I think about 2 or 3 months after I ran that first 5K, started reading some running books. I came across that, certain book that a lot of folks have read that, talks about the virtues of ultra running and the abilities of certain tribes in Mexico and etc. Quickly decided that ultra running was going to be my future. Thankfully, didn't sign up for any ultras right away, which maybe that is what you did, but for me, it was important to actually develop some strength since I'd never been an athlete in any context. So I set a goal to run a marathon about a year after I started running. Um, that was in 2011, 2010 was that first 5K. 10, 10, 10 was the date. Never forget that. So about exactly a year later, in October of 2011, I ran my first road marathon. Um, didn't go amazing, as most marathons don't. I think I was on, a goal pace, if I even knew what that was at the time, for about, you know, 30K, 18 miles or so. Ended up walking, had two high school buddies show up in a car to, presumably cheer me on. I think actually give me a ride home after. I ended up stealing a Snickers from one of them as he was, jogging next to me in his in his candy bar. Wouldn't have finished without that sugar boost. But it took about 3.5 hours, so it didn't go terrible. Looking back, it felt terrible. I thought I'd never run again after that for probably a month or so. Still didn't sign up for any ultras or anything right away. A few months later, I ran a second marathon where I ended up getting sick just beforehand, so I ran a little slower than that first one. But then I started getting serious. I started downloading some online training plans, connecting with other runners in the area that I met at some races or friends introduced me to, and then quickly realized growing up in New England that one of the big goals a lot of new marathon runners and runners in general have is that Boston qualifying marathon time, right? So Boston Marathon, you can run it supporting a charity, or you can qualify based on a time. So I think for me the time was about 3 hours and 5 minutes. So I had to drop about a half hour off my current best at that time, but I gave myself a year to qualify and then another year before I would actually try to run it. So fall 2012 was my goal race. I ended up running about 3:01 and change. Usually you need to go a little under that goal time or that required time for Boston. So fortunately, I had enough of a cushion that I was able to get in for the first time. And I think based on the time frame, I couldn't run 2013, so I was able to sign up for the 2014 Boston Marathon. So that was my first one, I think, if I remember correctly. In the meantime, I had moved down from New Hampshire down to Massachusetts, found a local running club, the Greater Lowell Roll Runners, connected with those guys, really started learning how to do weekly workouts and actually put together a training plan or a training volume week to week, and just all the essentials of, um, you know, training, for lack of a better word. Um, Weekly long runs, workouts, easy runs, the whole thing, strength training, just obsessed with learning as much as possible at that point. Really trying to take in whatever I could. And I think that's super helpful for new runners and runners who've been doing it for a long time alike. There's, numerous friends over the years have had similar quotes to this one of, there's no science, there's no rocket science behind running. There's no real magic formulas. It's a lot of hard work. The main key being consistency. So staying injury free, staying consistent, um, you know, mostly easy miles, a couple workouts, that type of thing. So I started following those basics. And then I had some pretty aggressive goals from that first one, right? I got the 301 marathon. Really, the main focus was on marathons. Started running with that club. So I started doing all the club races. New England's super, super blessed to have this, or privileged to have this amazing running scene where there's a Grand Prix series on the roads, there's a cross country series in the fall, there's some indoor track opportunities. So basically from 2013, 2014 on, when I moved down to Massachusetts, I just started doing it all, right? Everything I could experience. At that point, the one thing lacking still being the trails. There wasn't a big trail scene at the time. So really everything on roads and track and cross country, and yeah, just eating it up, trying everything. I went to Boston, like I said, the first time in 2014. That was still a big goal, run the marathon. Prior to that, I had run a couple more marathons, so at that point got my personal best down to about 2:48. And then that first Boston, I think I ran mid 2:30, 2:36, something like that. Really just eating up every second of it. It was the year after the horrific bombing at the Boston finish line, so the crowds, the support, everything was just insane. One of those truly unforgettable life experiences. Like I said, had a good run there, and then started doing even more of the other stuff that I had been kind of playing around with. Like, man, I went right to marathons. What am I missing out on? And, do I need to work on speed? So I think 2015, 2016, had a friend reach out and ask if I wanted to get into some coaching. I felt like a new runner myself still, but like I said, I've been researching and really trying to become a student of the sport. So I took a volunteer assistant type of coaching job at a small local D3 college just outside of Boston, where I learned even more, with the other coaches there, and really working with kids and working with, other athletes, and amazing experience as a still relative newcomer to the sport. And then up until about 2017 was still focused on mostly track and road racing. And then in 2017 started kind of dabbling in the trail scene. At that point I had a coach, and that coach had some training partners of hers that were coming out to New Hampshire to run the mountain champs. I think it was up at Loon Mountain that year. So I went up with them, signed up for the race. That was probably my first real mountain race. Did not go well. It was a lot of fun. And those folks that were out there, many of them are now professional runners. So I got to see a few folks at the beginning of their career that still inspire me to this day. But really that weekend just kind of showed me the different side of sport that is the trail scene. Running is one of those incredible sports in general where we just have access to the professional circuit at a level that you don't have in other sports. I think I've joked with friends before that you can't step on a court with an NBA team and shoot around, shoot some hoops with them, and it's just not something that we have an opportunity to do day to day. But from that first Boston Marathon I did, Meb and Ryan were running out. Ryan Hall, Meb Kofleski were running out, giving us all high five in that front corral as they went up to the elite corral. And it was just, wow, here I am with the idols that I have in this sport, the icons of the sport at the time. Meb, of course, went on to win, first American to win Boston in years, so, more inspiration. And then, fast forward again back to 2017, hanging out with Matt Daniels and who else was there? Addie Bracy, and I know I'm forgetting a few names, but there was a few folks that were just kind of new to the trail scene and are now, these established pro runners out there. And it was just incredible watching them go and dominate. I think I finished, maybe in the mid 50s, so solidly middle pack. But it kind of gave me the bug for doing more of these mountain and trail races. 2016, sorry, I misspoke. That was 2016. So the main goal the next year, 2017, was to go back to Mountain Champs, which was in New Hampshire again. With that excitement for trail running and now a full year of training put into it. So 2017, I did do some track, but really just the focus was getting out there on trails. At the time I was being coached, but really trying to learn and coach myself some more, especially with the trail specific types of workouts and those types of things. So 2017 went back to Mountain Champs in New Hampshire again. Super lucky that year that it was an up and downhill year where we did two up, two downs. I am far better at downhill running than I'll ever be aerobically at uphill running. I think I just have to recognize that at this point. So I was super lucky, finished 10th that year, and it was just incredible being part of that first, top 10 championship field that they honor at these US Champ races. Got to stand up on the, the podium/lawn afterwards. The pictures and all that and the special medals, and it just really cemented for me that this is just what I want to do with my interests outside of work and that type of thing. Right around that same time had got together with my wife at the I'm trying to think what I was going to say after that. So we had just gotten married, just got together, just had this race. She did it as well. We both were thinking, okay, we're really into this trail running. We've both been runners, my wife, for years. We'll have to do a separate video on her background because it's absolutely incredible. But we both started thinking, okay, we're married. We love running. We love trails. We love skiing and snowboarding probably even more than running. And we live just outside of Boston. And sure, it snows and it's cold, but we don't have mountains. We have to drive for those. We don't have the time or the money to drive for those. We want to have our own place, and here comes Idaho. Basically looked up and down the Rockies for different mountain towns. We knew a lot about the other big hubs, the big training meccas of Flag and Boulder, etc. And we didn't know anything about Southern Idaho, but we had heard, hey, we could probably afford a house in Boise. That'd be really cool to actually own a house instead of renting. Which is pretty much the only option if you aren't a millionaire and you live in New England. So we came out for a visit to Boise, stayed for 3 or 4 days, had an excellent realtor show us 30 houses maybe. It was a complete whirlwind. And without really knowing what we were doing, we put in an offer for what ended up being the first house we had looked at. That offer was accepted. 3 weeks later, we were, packing up the dogs and moving to just outside of Boise. Once we got out here, it was, that's no more limitations when it comes to trail running. I think it was our first week here, and we did a 25-mile run in the foothills outside of Boise, and that was it. We were hooked even more so. That was 6 years ago, and over the past 6 years, really just devoted myself to learning how to coach myself, learning how to train for trails, learning what types of events are, my favorite,